So for the methods section here, this section of your paper is really about the who, what, when, where, and how things were done, right? That's really what you're getting at with the methods section. And the key, particularly when you're not dealing with sort of, very sort of qualitative, sort of place-based research, is that the key is to provide the means for someone else to precisely repeat what you've done, right? That is the foundation of much of science, right? Is being able to repeat a study. And if I don't know what you've done, I can't repeat it. And this is the section to tell me what you've done. Clarity is absolutely critical to doing it, right? You've got to be really, really clear in the section. And I would also argue that you have to be very complete, right? And what a lot of people will do is they will say, using the methods of so-and-so, I did this, and then they go on to that. And the way that I want you guys to think about writing your methods section is to think about me reviewing your paper. And I'm on a plane, and I don't have internet access. And I've got an hour or 2 hours or maybe 12, well, it's a long haul flight, to review your paper. But when I get back, I've got things to do. And I'm not going to get to it again. I'm not going to look at your paper again because my schedule is busy. If, when I get to your methods, you tell me that I can't review the paper on the plane, that I need to go get the internet and then go look up someone else to find out what you've done, you've just gotten yourself rejected. I can't review the paper. I write to the editor, I can't evaluate the quality of this, the methods are incomplete. And that's my review, and you get a rejection from that. So, make sure it's all there. And when you're thinking about how to write your methods section, think about Josh on a plane. Does he have everything he needs in that long haul flight to review this paper? Or am I telling him that he's got to go look in 7 different places to find out how to review this paper? Right? And if it's the latter, you really need to change it, because a lot of times people do it when they're traveling, when they're busy, and they don't have access to look up so-and-so from 1999. Now that being said, if it's a completely standard thing, like whatever, if it's using a pipette to do something, you don't need to describe what a pipette is if that's the standard in your field, right, or whatever it is. But, so find a little bit of balance there, but really have the information that's needed, that somebody needs to evaluate your study. So for the methods section, you need to find a style that works for you. There isn't like a style for the methods, but consider subsections on site selection, right? And this is what we were talking about before. I think about do you have the background and study site there or in the methods? And I actually think the background should go before, and this should be about how do you choose, why did you choose the village or villages or whatever, the path or the plot in the forest that you're studying. Why did you choose those, right? Another section on sampling. How did you choose the people that you're talking to? Or how did you choose the trees that you're measuring the diameter for, or the fish that you studied? How did you choose your respondents? How did you sample? Which is different from how did you choose your site, right? You might consider a section on response variables, right? Those are the way that I think about things when I'm doing at least quantitative work, is that I've got response variables and I've got predictor variables, and I try to predict responses, right? So people use dependent and independent variables. I find that really confusing, but I find a response and a predictor much more easy, much more intuitive. But so for the response variables, maybe you want a table, or maybe that's actually, for the predictor variables as well, you want to have a table that clearly indicates what it is. And what I've really started doing lately is not only having a table that describes what each variable is, but I also describe the data type that it's used. Is it a continuous variable? Is it a ordinal variable? Is it a yes, no, a one, present, absent sort of thing? And the reason I've started doing this is it actually makes it really easy for a reviewer who's trying to understand whether you've chosen the right model or the right analysis, if they can see at a glance all of the different data types that you're trying to deal with in your study, right? So if you've got certain types of data that aren't suited to the model that you're using, something like this table could really, really help someone understand whether you're using the right model and give you better advice on which one to use. Now, again, for more qualitative research, this may not necessarily be as applicable, but it could be. You could talk about what were the main themes that you were interested in. I looked at so-and-so, and here's how I've described empowerment, right, or whatever it is, and I also have a separate section on analysis. So, this is, typically kind of what my methods section will look like: site selection, sampling, response variables, predictor variables, and analysis. The key things that we want to really get at, again, is, could you replicate the study exactly? Could you go back and do this, given the information that you've received? Or is there some mystery and shamanism in what you've done? And if so, figure out how to get that out. Are you clear about what data were collected? Right? Are you clear about how sites were selected and how sampling within sites was done? Are you clear which are the dependent variables and which are the independent variables, or in this case, which are the predictor and the response variables, right? Sometimes people don't actually know when they're doing that. They're not actually sure which is which, and that shows because their analysis is muddled and everything's muddled. Now, the rationale for doing it, that's a good question. In an ideal world, you would have covered that rationale in your introduction, right? But not, so you would have said something like, previous research has shown the effects of whatever habitat, that biomass is influenced by things like structural complexity, whatever, productivity, depth, and habitat type, right? And so you might actually have that in there. So in an ideal world, not all worlds are ideal, and sometimes you can't do it in the intro, but in one sense, you should be talking about why you're doing all those things in there. So, yeah. And again, are you clear about which analyses were used, if applicable? And even if you're doing things like using in vivo to do it in a qualitative sense, be clear about what your analytical approach was that too. There's rigor in qualitative studies, and you can explain that rigor, and I think some people are shy about doing that, and they just say, qualitative data doesn't have that. It's actually not true. Qualitative data can be very, very rigorous.